Shalom, Bethel family. It is Thursday once again. Time to review our Torah talk from last week here at Congregation Bethel in Norfolk. Last week we actually had a guest, Rick Recht, presented an amazing musical Shabbat that we loved. So this is the Torah from 2 weeks ago, Parshat Vayishlach, when we talked about the famous story where Jacob wrestles an angel the night before he's going to meet his brother, the night before he comes back into the promised land. He's all alone. He wrestles with this angel. He beats the angel, right? And he has the angel pinned down just before morning. And the angel cries out, the sun is about to rise, and I have to go. Apparently angels have a vampire-like quality of not wanting to be out in the daytime. And Jacob says, no, I won't let you go unless you bless me. The angel asks Jacob, what is your name? And Jacob says, Yaakov. And he says to him, Lo Yaakov, Ye'amer Od, you will no longer be known as Jacob. Ki im Yisrael, Kim Sarita im Elohim ve'im anashem v'tuchal. But now, from now on, we're going to call you Israel, because you have struggled with an angel of God and with men, and you have prevailed. Of course, this name Israel is very important. We, as the Jewish people, will come to be known as Bnei Yisrael. What I really want to talk about when we address this story is how we tell our own narratives, right? How do we tell our own stories? Because so much of how we think of ourselves, of our lives, are defined by the way we tell the tale of our lives, right? We are the narrators of our lives, and we decide what is an important event and what is not, what makes it into that story and what does not. And as Bnei Yisrael, as the ones who struggle, right, struggle with God, struggle with people, and prevail, it is very tempting to tell the story of the Jewish people, as it is very tempting to tell the story of our lives as a series of struggles, as a series of mishaps. And God knows, in our thousands-year history, we've had our share as Jewish people, and each one of us, everyone goes through struggles. That is part of the human condition, and that's okay. But do we really want to define our whole story, tell our whole stories only as Yisrael, only as the ones who struggle? That's a great temptation. But our tradition teaches us differently, because we are not only simply known as Bnei Yisrael. That is our main name, the children of Israel, the ones who struggle. And yet we are called by other names. And those other names are the key to understanding that in order to have a meaningful life, in order to be a meaningful people, right, in order for Judaism to make sense, being Bnei Yisrael to make sense, it has to be more than struggle. So I want to highlight two other names by which the Jewish people, by which we are called. The first one goes back to Parshat Lech Lecha and our ancestor Avram. Right, in the midst of this whole episode with his nephew Lot and these kings at war, a fugitive, an escapee, comes to it says Avram Ha'ivri, right? Avram Ha'ivri, this Avram the Hebrew. What does it mean to be an Ivri? We associate it with Ivrit, with the language Hebrew, and we assume he's called that because that's the language that Abraham spoke. But there's a lot of question to whether or not Avram actually spoke Hebrew, right? He came from Ur, we know, across the river. In these later Parshiot, we read how his relative Lavan is known as the Arami. They speak Aramaic in Ur, and that jibes with what we know historically. So he should be Avram HaArami. So what is Ivri? Ivri is that Rashi teaches us, the commentator, because he came from across the Euphrates River. Or was across the river, so he was Ivri. Over means to be passed on the other side, right? So he was over the Euphrates. He was on the other side of the Euphrates, and so he's the Ivri from that root. But I want to expand on that, because we can now, with the hindsight of history, we can look at that word, Ivri, differently. What does it mean to pass Avram has passed through history, right? He started a chain that started with him and went to Yitzchak and went to Yaakov, who would be Yisrael. And that chain goes generation to generation, all the way to us. Right? What Avram passed forward, he is the one who has passed through history, who has passed this special relationship with God, this covenant, this approach to the world, bringing morality into it, to be both part of history and yet outside of history, influencing history, and to be influenced by history, right? All of that is Avram's legacy, even to this day, even to us. So Avram is the Ivri, and what part of being an Ivri, as we are, means that we are not the end of that link in the chain, God forbid, but that chain is going to continue onward into the future, right? We are one very important link in this chain of Ivri that starts with Avram. And when we want to understand how to put the struggles that we have in context as Jewish people or in our lives, that is one of the keys that Judaism gives us. How do you manage as Bnei Yisrael, as human beings who are going to struggle? One way is see yourself in this context, right? That yes, you have inherited a lot of wonderful things and maybe some not such great things from your family, from your society, certainly from your faith. And that it's our job to make those things better and to pass them forward again into a future that we hope to be even better, even more meaningful, even more spiritual for our children. When we want to know how to function as the ones who struggle, we struggle as Ivrim, as the masters of a great tradition and a people who acts in history and moves that history forward for future generations. There's another name that we are called by. I even said it once already, right? We are the Judahites. We practice Judaism, or as we would say it, Jews, right? So that name comes from the parsha before this one, right? When Leah has a baby, she names this child, her fourth, I believe it is, Hapa'am Odeh et Adonai, al kain kara shemo Yehuda. Right? This time I will thank the Lord, Odeh, therefore his name will be Yehuda. Yehuda is great because it has the root Hod, which is the root to give thanks, but it also contains God's name, Yud He Vav He, with that Dalid in the middle. So it's almost inherent in the name, Judah, is to give thanks to God, right? But what's amazing about Leah being the one to name Judah, to come up with this idea, Yehuda, the Talmud teaches us that Leah is the very first person to have this idea to thank God. Right? Up until this point in human history, says the Gemara, says the Talmud, no one has given thanks to God in this way. It was Leah's idea. What's amazing about that to me is that of all the people in the biblical narrative up until this point, Leah seems to have the least reason to thank God. Right? Leah was less loved by her husband than her sister. Leah was manipulated by her father into this marriage situation. Right? Leah was always living in the shadow of her sister, described as weak-eyed, right, or dim-eyed. It makes sense to me that the world, in fact, looked dim to her. Right? It was harder for her to see the light. But specifically Leah, she is the one in her struggles who thought, I'm going to give thanks to God. Because one of the ways of dealing with struggles, dealing with life when it is difficult, dealing with history when it seems to be unfair, is to look for those things that are good, look for those things that are beautiful, look for those things that are spiritual and meaningful and nurturing even amidst the darkness. And when we give gratitude in that way, we create our own light and the world looks less dim. That is the great gift, the great lesson of our ancestor Leah. So what we get by not getting stuck on the name Bnei Yisrael, not getting stuck in the struggles, but in fact, remembering that, yes, we are Bnei Yisrael, because we are reminded that even though we will have a special relationship with God, even though we will have a covenant with God that is meaningful and important and will have an incredible impact on humanity and the history of the world, even with that, we will still struggle. Because part of being human means that we will struggle. But we will also have the gifts, the keys to have a meaningful life, to be a meaningful people in this world, despite our struggles. And those gifts are to be the Ivrim, to remember that we are a link in an amazing and beautiful chain. And with that comes tremendous responsibility, but also tremendous gift and meaning in our lives. And also to remember that we are the Yehudim, we are the ones who give thanks, and by giving thanks, we recognize how much more there is in this world than just our struggles. And we're able to shift our perspective onto that which we should be grateful for. We are so privileged to be B'nai Yisrael, those who struggle, but with the tools to know how to make this life meaningful, and how to make this world better, and how to make this world more beautiful because of our faith and our tradition. May we all be able to fulfill all of the names of our people, and through that to find that meaning and that beauty and that gift that is our life. That's how we should tell our story, and may we all be successful in doing so.